Proverbs 31. Once again, we're on part 2 of our 4-part series working through the book of Proverbs. Well, not the whole book, just one chapter in the book of Proverbs. So, last week we started with the beginning of this little section in Proverbs 31. We started at verse 10, and we're going to take our way all the way from verse 10 to verse 31. So last week we did verses just 10 through 12. We only did 3 little tiny itty bitty baby verses. But it was great. It was good discussion. Thank you guys so much for everything that you contributed to what we were talking about there. Before we get into it today, let's just remind ourselves what we're doing here. All right, this section of Proverbs 31, we're taking this chunk for a reason. Give me some of your reasons. What did you learn last week, or you just know from why we read Proverbs 31 in this little section the way we do? There are no wrong answers.
To find out about the righteous woman.
Okay, so the purpose being to find out about this righteous woman. Who is she? Yeah, good. All right. That's kind of going along with what the purpose of these verses goes or is. What else did you kind of learn about maybe the structure or?
But it's poetry.
Poetry, yes, good. I'll write this over here. We have some poetry.
And her importance.
Okay, the woman's importance.
She's worth far more than rubies.
Yeah. So we're talking about this woman, and we will continue talking about this woman today. Who is she? What is she doing? Why are we talking about her at all? But so about the structure, the words on the page here, we learned that it was poetry. Is it English poetry?
No,
Hebrew. Hebrew poetry, and I heard acrostic. Very good. All of those are wonderful answers. What is an acrostic? What do you mean by that?
A, B, C, D.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
But in Greek.
But Hebrew, right. Hebrew alphabet, right? Because we're not dealing with the English, we're dealing with the Hebrew here. So the acrostic is going through the Hebrew alphabet. And this was just, it's just a poetic device that you'll find, like we rhyme. You think poetry and you think, oh, I'm going to rhyme, see the cat, she ate a bat or something like that. But so this is kind of like that, and what they did was they used these sort of devices to aid in memory. If something rhymes, then you kind of remember that, right? We have, what's that thing called? Where you have a letter. Acronym? Yeah, right, okay, thank you. You guys are way smarter than me. So this is just another one of those, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, except in Hebrew. So we're going to write some funny letters on the board and try to guess what they mean. It's really fun. Good. So that kind of drives what the first word in each verse, it sometimes is significant. And then sometimes it's just, we're trying to come up with the letter that fits in this pattern. So we can kind of talk about that. Why would the author maybe choose this word? What's its significance? Is it significant? Maybe it's not. Maybe it is. Good discussions. Okay, just fill me in from last week. One thing that you guys took away from those 3 verses, and we talked about a lot more than just 3 verses. We kind of talked about the whole purpose of the book of Proverbs. Just somebody sort of throw something out there.
A good wife is hard to find.
A good wife is hard to find, right? Okay. Talking about this woman, wife, hard to find. What else? What'd you get?
We talked about wisdom.
Wisdom. Mm-hmm. Good. Because this is a main theme throughout this book.
Well, along with the wisdom, I think to me, this is always this part of talking about her worth and her wisdom. That's where her strength comes from. Her strength is in her wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Her strength is in her wisdom.
And that's what benefits her as well as benefiting her husband and how she fears the Lord. So I'm going to kind of read the rest of it. But
right.
So her strength that she gets from her wisdom is
the strength is in the wisdom, and then she is able to do these other things for these other people. Yeah, very good, very good.
We talked about fear.
That's your favorite verse.
Yes.
What's your favorite?
We also talked about awe.
Yes.
And
Good.
too.
Yeah.
The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Right.
Knowledge, I was just going to say, wisdom comes from knowledge.
Right. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Proverbs 1, verse 7. We'll come back to that many times. Many times. Yeah. Very good. Okay. And the big question we kept asking was, who is this woman? Is it me? Is it somebody else? We're not going to answer it right now because we have more things to talk about today. If you were here last week, you know what we said. We'll talk about it again. Okay. Let's get right into it then. So we today are going to be looking at verses 13 through 20 in Proverbs 31. Whoops. Here we go. So, somebody else like that too. Would somebody like to read those verses for us as we kind of go through?
Want somebody else to read them?
Everybody points to Marlene. Here, wait, before you start, Marlene, sorry. I'm going to close that door. Just so we can hear a little better. Okay, I'll stand over here by you.
13 through 20.
Just 13 through 20, yeah.
She selects wool and flax and works with eager hands. She's like the merchant ships, bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it is still dark. She provides food for her family and portions for her servant girls.
Keep going.
She considers a field and buys it out of her earnings. She plants a vineyard. She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her tasks. She sees that her trading is profitable, and her lamp does not go out at night. In her hands she holds the distaff and grasps the spindle with her fingers. She opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy.
Thank you. Very good. Okay. So we're going to attempt to answer, we're going to attempt to really look at this woman today. Because if you notice, we start these verses with just kind of a nice description about who she is, right? We're going to work through and see, who is this woman? So let's look at verse 13 first. What do you got there? What does she do?
Selects things, wool and flax.
Okay, you have selects there. Oh, yes, that's right. We're doing acrostic, right? So we need to know what letter in the Hebrew alphabet we're looking at. So this is our D, Daleth. That looks like a D, right? And you're right. The verb there is, it's actually more like seek. So she's looking for, she's kind of, out there sort of seeking this. What is she seeking?
Effort.
Good. Do you guys have any notes maybe on these words, these wool and flax?
The fibers were being able to be woven or
Yeah.
made into linen.
Right. So these are kind of more raw materials. So it's not like she was going to Walmart to buy the clothes. I mean, which is nothing wrong with that. That's not bad.
Selecting the finest one. Or
Right.
Seems.
So she was actually kind of starting with these raw materials, getting ready to make some stuff. She was seeking these things out. Okay. What else?
And she's willing. She's willing to work.
Eager, willing. Do you have more?
She's a Wonder Woman.
Yeah, well, there is that, right?
She never sleeps.
Well, we get that too, right? So we've kind of heard this before, right? This willing, eager hands. What's the verse that everybody always uses? Like, give with a happy heart, or that kind of sentiment that it's a willing, happy, joyful giving.
Joyful.
What is it?
I don't know. You just slip right out.
Yeah. So this is what she does. This work. She's doing work. She's not sitting
Happy
around.
hands, happy heart, or something like that.
Okay. Right. And we get this.
Yeah.
We're trying to think of some good verses here. Something about idols. Idle hands is the devil's playground or something like that. It's not actually in the Bible, but I mean, it's a good. We get it, right? Yeah.
It sounds like she's weaving it. It's not like she's going out and buying this.
Right.
She's actually making this.
Yes.
She will.
Actually spinning.
She will be spinning it, right?
She's actually,
Right.
Cindy, and this is sort of off.
Yes.
The thing.
We like
But
off.
this is an acrostic.
Yes.
And this is the Hebrew letter G.
This is the Hebrew letter D. Yes. Well.
G.
Yeah. Yeah. Well.
Well, seek. What? I'm just curious. What is the Hebrew
Oh,
word?
we like Hebrew here. I love it. Looks like this. Darash. Ooh, I spelled it wrong already. Sorry, guys. It's darash, like that. To seek. It's an resh. Got it?
So it wouldn't, even if I could say the Hebrew
Yeah.
word, to me it wouldn't be sounding out like it comes from a D.
Okay, so here's the thing. Yes, the Hebrew alphabet is different from the English alphabet. And so already we did, if we were transliterating it into the English alphabet, we did A, B, G, D. That's kind of like how their alphabet goes. So we're going according to the Hebrews and their deal. So this is the fourth letter in the Hebrew alphabet, let's put it like that. And it comes across with a D sound.
Oh, okay,
So we're going to get some weird ones coming up here that we have no letter in the English alphabet like. So
that's why we get words in the Bible where they use the Hebrew word. rather
good.
than-
Yes, that's why we get words in the Bible that use the Hebrew word rather than trying to translate it into English. For example, we talked about Sheol before. That's kind of a hard one to sort of grasp what they're talking about. And so sometimes they'll just say, we're just going to say Sheol, because that's what the Hebrew said, and they knew what it meant. I mean, you know, we can sort of see what it means with its context and things like that, but there are those words that we just don't have maybe a great translation in English for, so sometimes they'll keep them in the Hebrew, yeah. And names, mostly, you know, you're going to get people's names, they sound like the Hebrew for the most part, that kind of thing, and other places and stuff like that. Yahweh, that's one of them, right? Yeah, so this is the fourth letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and it sounds kind of like a D.
A, B, G, D.
Yeah, that's what I should do. I should give you guys a list of all the Hebrew letters, and we can match them up, darn it?
Yeah, we can.
All right, next time. That's right. We'll have a quiz at the end, your Hebrew letters. I know, I need to remember how to say them all. That's pronunciation has always been my, so we'll work together. Okay, so willing hands, happy heart. It doesn't say happy heart, but you know, we kind of get that sentiment. This is a description of who this woman is. All right, let's go on. We're just going to look at her right now. We're not going to try to bring in other things. So let's look at verse 14. Next letter in the Hebrew alphabet is
It's like a merchant ship. Can you see a big merchant ship coming into shore?
yeah, like a merchant ship. Yeah, let's
Bringing food from afar.
talk about. This is the word. It's like a sound, H. It's like an H sound, and this comes from the word to be. So it's that she is, the verb. She is, and we can say whatever we want after that, right? She is, no. The Hebrew said, she is like the ships of the merchant, or something like that. Let me see what else we have. Does anybody have a different translation for that?
I have, she's an enterprising person.
An enterprising person. Okay, so this is kind of giving us a few steps down in the translation. What does it mean that she's like a merchant ship? Does it mean she's big and boxy and she floats on water? Let's hope not. That's what it means.
Thinking of the figurehead, is that what it's called? It's usually a beautiful mermaidy looking.
Something coming off the front of the ship?
Right?
Okay.
Is that called the figurehead?
I have no idea. Anybody got ship language?
Yeah.
Figurehead? Okay, so she's like the merchant ship. So let's think about what the merchant ship does. Like
Trading ship. They're importing goods.
importing goods, right?
Well, they go from port to port.
Right, port to port.
And they bring food or supplies or whatever. Sometimes they carry passengers.
Sure.
They go from this port to that port. They might bring on new supplies and
Right.
they give out supplies. Trade.
Yeah, trading and bringing and giving and all that stuff.
She probably would go to the port, and she's not sailing the ship, but she's maybe bringing her linens and stuff, things that she has made, and she's trading.
So this is a great opportunity for us to talk about figurative language and metaphors and things like that. Because first of all, we have them all over the place. And when we have something like a metaphor, this is like a ship, our minds are going, okay, how is she like a ship? Which characteristics are we talking about here? Are we talking about her size? We could be, right? Are we talking about, what color she is? Are we talking about what she does? And so it's trying to figure out from context and from other parts of Scripture. Is everything okay?
Yes, it didn't sound like a crash, it just sounded like brakes.
Oh, brakes. Okay. Woo. Sorry, something disturbing just happened on the outside of our.
Hear the ending result, so.
Okay. All right.
Or
All
a
right.
kid screams.
Right. There's
That's what I thought. I thought it was a scream, but. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. We'll see. Sorry. Back to reality here. So what characteristics of the ship are we actually talking about?
Solidarity, maybe. It's steadfastness.
Well, I think we get some clues actually in this very verse. So before our mind starts going all over the place, what is the second line of this verse?
From afar.
Does a merchant ship do that? Does a merchant ship bring food from afar?
Yeah.
Ah, look at that. We didn't have to try too hard. It was right there. And so, talking about other metaphors in Scripture, this is kind of the way we should think about it. What can we get out of the context? What is it really talking about here? What are the factors that it is like, and maybe the factors that it's not like? A bad thing to do with metaphors is to say, okay, because it says she's like a ship, every characteristic of a ship is like this woman. And then you're starting to say things that the metaphor is not saying. Like somehow, I don't even know what you could say about a ship that would not be like this woman. We're actually looking for, what does the author intend by saying this woman is like a ship? It's not everything like a ship. It's particular things about a ship. And so what are those things? That's a good conversation to have. So I think here it's pretty clear, because the next part of the verse lets us in on that little situation there. So she's like a ship, bringing food from afar.
She goes out of her way to find it.
Sure. She's seeking it, collecting it, bringing back. She's industrious. She's, what did yours say? It said, enterprising woman. Yeah, right? Okay, good. Anything else with that verse in particular?
letter for 14.
Oh, yes, it's like an H. So it looks like an H, right? And it comes from this verb, to be. Looks a little different in the Hebrew in this verse, but it's like haya. Haya! Yeah, that'll be next. Like a hey.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of, except this part's important right here. You have to have the little break. See, a little tiny break? Yeah, that's important. Because there's one that doesn't have the break. So you have to know the difference between the two. All right, good. I'm glad we're all on the same page here. So, yes, coming, I didn't write anything down here. She's like a ship, bringing food from afar. Good. All right, let's move on. 15. What do you think, just guessing, what do you think the word is?
Gets up.
Oh, good. Yes,
Rises.
you're right. Rises. And this is one of those ones like, yeah, we just gotta put one in there. This is a wow consecutive form of the verb. So this is a wow. That's the next letter. Wow. Yeah, and it's just a verb form. So it's not actually like part of the verb. It's just the little letter that they put on front to show you that, hey, this verb's coming. And so, again, you can pick whatever word you wanted to put in there. Fantastic. So this one, though, is she rises. She rises while it's still what? Dark. Oh, yes.
Mine says she is not a sluggard.
And she's not a sluggard. Yeah. Good. Yeah, we've had that a lot in Proverbs when we've looked at the beginning of the book. We've had a lot of emphasis on the productive and the sluggard, the righteous even, and the lazy. They're kind of on the foolish side of things. So, not her. She's up early.
Hey, but she's got servant girls. She's not so bad off.
Yeah.
She's got servant girls.
Okay, hold on really. Yeah, I think we're.
But she has to feed them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's responsibility.
She trains them right. They'll
Cook for her. Yes.
My phone does funny things, so please forgive my phone for being like that. All right, so yes, she's rising, she's providing for her household, so you can kind of get this picture of somebody who is bringing things in, taking care of these girls, all kinds of things for other people as well. And you guys, I'm looking around the room. You guys look like you all have had other people to take care of, right? Sometime in your life. Still, right? And that rising in the night to do something for somebody else. Like, it just takes me back to baby days, right? Where it didn't matter how tired you were. When a little baby screamed, you had to get up and deal with it, And so just that idea of, she's rising in the night. This is not about her. This is about other people. And she's doing these things for them. Yeah. Okay, 16.
She buys the field.
Interesting.
Earnings and plants a vineyard. Tell me, this woman is miraculous.
She's amazing, isn't she? Right. The next letter we're looking at is like a Z sound.
Is that considers?
And it's, yes, considers or plans. This is a mom.
A field, considers a field.
Oh, sorry, sideways. This is a mom. Yeah, so she's considering planning a field. And what does she do? She buys it. Does anybody have a different translation for that? She buys it. It's really kind of a cool word because it's like she seizes it, she takes it. It's kind of a little bit more violent than just like, oh, I'd like to buy your field, She takes that field, and so we get this picture of this woman that's not just kind of like in the corner in the shadows sort of doing things, but she's like out there getting stuff, buying fields, taking that field, she is doing stuff. And so here she seizes it, takes it, and then what does she do?
Plants a vineyard.
Yeah. Right, so I'll write down now. She considers the field.
With her hands.
Ooh,
She plants.
yeah, good. With the fruit of her hands, right? So it's talking about this out of her earnings. Okay, so it's going back to what she has done, right? So the fruit of her hands is literally how it says it in the Hebrew, but then your translation is kind of taking it one step further. Well, what is the fruit of her hands? Oh, it's what she earned. And so that's how she is.
saying this was her husband's money and she went out and bought something.
Right. She
That's
wasn't
what my
doing.
note says.
Right, okay.
That it's evident that it's the work of her hands that's enabled her to purchase this.
The work of her hands.
Yeah.
Okay. has enabled her to purchase this. I love
This
that.
verse demonstrates remarkable financial independence for a woman in the ancient world. She herself considers a field and buys it with substantial amounts of money.
Okay, so whatever she's doing it well, and the fruit of her hands is how she is able to buy this field.
And
Right.
we really don't know anything about her husband.
Yeah, we're not really talking about him right now, right? We're kind of talking about her and what she does in her work, right?
We
That's
just know
something,
that he's being taken care of.
and he's being taken care of along with it. Absolutely, right. Good.
Mine goes even further in her good judgment. Unlike, she shows good judgment, unlike this sluggard whose vineyard is overgrown with thorns and weeds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You have that in your,
In my notes.
oh, in the notes. Oh, I was like, whoa, that's a lot more than the verse. Yeah, but going back to what we have talked about before in Proverbs, you know, the difference between the righteous, careful planner of the wise and the foolish sluggard who can't even lift his spoon to his mouth to eat because he's so lazy. This is classic. It's in there.
Why the field was up for sale.
Yeah, couldn't even do that, right?
And when she buys the field and considers it, she wants one that will give her a profit.
Okay, good. Yeah, so she's considering a field that will give her a profit. Right, good. Okay, good.
How unusual would that be in that culture, for her to be able to do that?
Yeah, probably pretty unusual. Yeah.
Because usually if you didn't have a husband,
Yeah.
you had no source of income. You almost had to remarry immediately, or
Right.
yeah,
This was not
children would support you.
This was not a typical move that most women made in that time, probably buying a field.
Since she's married to a noble character,
Mm-hmm.
right? You wouldn't expect her to be digging out in the fields and all of
Right.
Yeah.
Now that's a great point too. I mean, you know, this woman, well, obviously she puts in a lot of hard work here. She gets dirty digging in a field, right? This is not just kind
She's got a
of,
lot of energy. Maybe
she's just got a lot of energy.
she does this so she doesn't get bored.
Yeah, well, sure. I'm sure there's all kinds of
hanging out
reasons.
with the ladies in the time.
Now remember, we are still wondering, who is this woman? Who is she? Just think about that as we're talking through.
Is this respected or is it looked down upon?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Is it respected or is it looked down upon at this time? Well, you as women, what do you think?
I would think there'd be a lot of jealousy.
Oh, jealousy of this woman.
I would think.
Interesting. That's interesting.
Even today, women don't support other women.
Oh, yeah. Well, I would agree with
I
that.
don't think so.
Well, even today, women don't support other women. I mean, I would say that's a really broad brush. I mean, because look around here, ladies.
Yeah.
We totally support each other, right? You know.
Yeah.
But I see where the sentiment is going. That there's kind of a jealousy and some walls built up when somebody's even doing really great and successful. Sometimes it's hard for other people to support and come along and encourage
That's
that.
part of our sinful nature.
Very much part of our sinful nature, absolutely. Yeah, right. And so that's a great observation, though, because you get that kind of like, who is she? You know?
So I'm
Really
sure there
hard in
is.
us.
Yeah, totally. Well, because I think what happens, I mean, like you said, this is sin. You know, this is, oh my gosh, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I can't meet up to this ridiculous standard. Why can she do it? What's so good about her? Who does she think she is? Absolutely. And so it's, you know what that is it's being convicted by the law, being convicted by the things that we cannot do. And then we imagine that somebody else actually can do it, and that's not always nice to think about, right? So to kind of deflecting our anger away from ourselves, because we should really be angry with ourselves not being able to do this kind of stuff. And we kind of look over there and say, ooh, there's got to be something wrong with her. How can she do this? Off topic. That's okay. That's good. But that's the kind of stuff like the law does to us. And especially if you don't have this hope that something comes from outside of you, right? I mean, how would you have any hope to look at yourself and say, yeah, I can't do this. You know, that's right, I can't. And you guys can boldly say that because you know who did it for you? Jesus. Christ. Every single piece of it was done for you. And so you can say weird things about yourself. Really, that other people can't say. You can say, yeah, I don't meet up to a ridiculous standard. That's right. Christ did that for me too. So there's a lot of comfort and hope in who actually does this stuff. Oh, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Shh, don't tell. All right, good. Let's go on to 17. Oh, I wrote too big. It's okay. Verse 17. Let's see.
She sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her task.
Okay, she sets about her work. We have next the fun letter. See, that one does not have, I'm sorry, this does connect, unlike this one. This one's like a sound. This one's like a sound. I love Hebrew, right? It's so much fun.
Is it dresses? Is it dresses?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Is it like a horseshoe? Or like a...
Yes. It's pretty straight. Sorry. Yeah, and
What's
so
the word?
The word is girds. She girds herself.
Okay,
she's dressing herself. But this has kind of again, like a military aspect to it. She's like girding herself with strength. Right? She's putting stuff on her hips and her arms, and she's going out for battle, right? Go ahead.
My notes in the bottom says that it says she's girding her loins.
She's girding her loins. Right.
That's man's terminology.
It sounds very manly. You're right. It doesn't sound like something normally associated with that gentle, quiet woman, right? Girding herself with strength. But here she is, dressing herself up. And so maybe that's kind of why they soften it a little bit. She dresses herself. Because women are like, oh, okay, yeah, right, we get that. But there's more to it here. She makes her arms strong.
Does she exercise?
Yeah, she probably does. I would, yeah. Yeah, so it's what's great about the Hebrew, what I love is it's always very fleshy. Say it again. Physical. Great. I love that. That's better. It's very physical. We're talking about like arms and legs and hips and body parts are happening here. And so this woman is kind of participating in this. It's not like some sort of floaty, happy, spirity stuff or, even like, oh, in my heart somewhere stuff. But it's real stuff. Yeah. So here we get more of that real stuff. And we kind of had it with, the hands. We get little hints of that. Working in the field, dirty, that kind of thing.
She's ready
Physical.
for anything.
She's ready for anything. Yep. Let's go to 18. What does it say there? Our word. Oh, here, let's write arms and legs.
She sees that her trading is profitable and her lamp does not go out at night.
Yeah. So she sees, the word there, it's actually, it's tape. It's like a T. I know, I'm getting so low on my board here. I'm so sorry. Kind of looks like a sideways, well, this is supposed to be a little loopy-loop thingy like that. Or, yeah. And this is actually, does anybody have anything beside, like, she perceives?
She perceives is what mine
Perceives or?
Yeah.
Okay. It's really commonly, it's like she tastes. She tastes that her merchandise is profitable. So that's kind of another sort of a fleshly, real thing. She's actually, it's not that she's licking everything and making sure it's okay, but
knowledge.
Yeah, but she has knowledge about it, and she's participating in it somehow, and she like knows that this is good. She perceives it, yes, but even more down in the dirt, she's tasting that it's good. And
Gritty and intimate.
say it again.
It's very gritty
Gritty
and intimate.
and intimate. Ooh, I like it. You must be an artist. Miss Hillary Asbury.com. So we have this almost, I'm going to throw it out there. If you don't know what it means, we'll talk about it later. Sacramental language, right? Feeling, touching, tasting. It's right there. Right. Good. Okay, let's finish this out. In 19 and 20, this is kind of a fun little section here. It is a little chiasm. And I'm just going to let you read it to yourself real quick, 19 and 20. And does everybody know what a chiasm is? A chiasm is like, comes from the Greek letter chi, Greek, not Hebrew. And it means that the first part of something sort of matches up, and then maybe the second part matches, and then the middle is sort of the main point. And so this is just, again, it's another structure to kind of make a point. But instead, like we do, we have our opening sentence, and then we have our 3 points, and then we have our conclusion, right? Okay, so they did it a little differently. They said the same thing at the beginning, at the end, then they moved in a little bit, and they said the same thing, and then in the very middle of their statement, they said the most important thing. And so it's just like a different way of structuring it. And if you've ever studied poetry at all, this is familiar to you. You've seen these kind of repeating things. So what I'm saying is this is repeating. A and A is the same, B and B is generally the same, and C. And here we have a little chiasm with the word, can you guess? Which word occurs a lot in those two verses? She. Okay, we have a lot of she. After that, hands. Yes. And so in verse 19, and this is really neat with the letter too. In verse 19, the letter is a yod, and that comes from the word hands. And verse 20, the letter is a k for ken, which means like, cough. Sorry. Cough, cough, cough. Cough, which means like palms. So we're playing with the word hands here in these next couple of verses. So it starts with what about her hands?
She's holding a distaff and grasps the spindle with her finger.
Right. So her hands, it says in the Hebrew, stretch out to the distaff. What is a distaff?
A fork.
I had to look it up.
It's like a two-pronged spindle for fork.
It's for spinning, yeah. It has something to do with spinning, and I'm not really...
A staff with a fork at the end that hooks flax or wool that can be lifted to the spindle.
Okay, so it has something to do with the first part of spinning something. Yes,
Yeah.
I wish I knew more. I do not. So yes, something like this. So her hands stretch out, it says, to this thing that we're going to work with now. And then her hands hold the other hand, right? Her hands stretch out. And then in verse 19, her hands hold the spindle. And then we have that repeated again. Her hands are doing what in verse 20?
Her arms.
Her hand spreads out to the poor, and her hand stretches out to the needy. So do you see how that kind of works with the chiasm there? So we'll call this hand, and we'll call this palm, just to distinguish. So it starts off with her hand does this, and then her palm does this. And then her palm does this, and then her hand stretches out. That's the same verb as it was in the beginning. Her hand stretches out to the poor and needy. So it's kind of neat, right? Look at that Hebrew poetry. We love it. Yeah, but we have this emphasis on hands and what they're doing. What I kind of like about this here is verse 19, what is this really talking about, this hand and palm? What are they doing there? If you were to just summarize in a sentence, or making things. Yeah. Making, spinning, something. And then what is the feeling of verse 20? What are the hands doing? Helping, serving. Yeah, help, serve, specifically who?
The needy.
The needy and the poor. Right. And there's this connection now between the work of her hands and serving the needy and the poor. All right. Go.
It's kind of the first time that it talks about her, like, providing for people other than her own, right? So the
Okay, good.
She's
Yeah.
talked about how she provides for her household, she takes care of her handmaidens, she's, but then now she's stretching out and giving it to people who don't belong to her at all.
Cool. Yeah, that's a great observation. So this is the first time that she's kind of reaching outside of her household and doing things for other people that are maybe beyond her own walls. So that's cool. Yeah, I like that.
It's like she's provided for her own first,
Mm-hmm.
and then goes out further.
Interesting. I like it. Ooh, it's the gang. We won't talk about that here, but you all know what I'm saying. All right. Now we're going to go back and we're going to ask this question because we just, go ahead. Yes.
Yes, my brain just went, ooh, is that what they meant by merchant ships? Like, she's, not just this one big, huge ship. She's like a merchant ship, right? She does all of these different things.
Yeah, sure. Right. Coming from all different places, bringing all different things. Absolutely. Yeah. Like the merchant ships that kind of bring things in. Absolutely. Right now, we just went through this description. We're going to stop here. There's more to talk about, of course, with this lady, but we're going to talk about this description of this girl who does all these amazing things. Who are we talking about? You guys do this stuff? All the time? Now, for sure, there are things to strive for, right? As women. I mean, of course, we want to be there for our families. And of course we want to be the best for our families and providing for our families and things like that. So you can kind of see how this is like, yeah, I can do this. I'm going to do this. This is what a woman should do. And I would say, absolutely, you're 100% right with that sentiment. This is exactly what a woman should do and should be. But the question is, how you doing?
We can't.
Oh, you're such good Lutherans. I love it. We can't do it.
Ask of any one person.
It's a lot to ask, isn't it? It really is. It's a little bit too much to ask. Does that make it any less true? No. God created women to do what? That.
To obey.
Yeah, right? And I know all of us say it with like rolling our eyes and things like that, but yeah, you're right. The problem is, this stuff's really hard. And even when we think we're doing it, we're actually not really doing that great of a job. We can just come up to the willing hands part. I mean, even if we're doing it, are we loving it? Oh, yes.
I just love to clean those toilets.
Love it. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't love it, because we absolutely should. This is what God has set for us. So the question is, who is this woman? And the argument that we are making in this class is this woman, this wise woman, this wisdom is actually Christ. Christ is the one that makes any of this work. And so we're even going to look back in Proverbs now to Proverbs 1, verse 20 and 22. We're just going to take a couple snippets of verses talking about, well, let's see who we're talking about in Proverbs 1, verse 20. 20 through 22.
Okay.
20 through 20.
Yeah.
Wisdom calls aloud in the street. She raises her voice in the public squares. At the head of the noisy street, she cries out. In the gateways of the city, she makes her speech. How long will you simple ones love your simple ways? How long will mockers delight in mockery and fools hate knowledge.
So we have crazy lady wisdom out in the street, yelling at all the people going by. How long are you guys going to keep going in your foolish ways? Right, and so this is the beginning picture that we get of this wisdom, this lady who's calling for people to be wise. All right, so then we're going to meet another lady, but we'll talk about her next week. She's the other lady, the not wise lady, the mean, well, not mean, let's not put it like that, the crafty lady. But we're going to just consider who is wisdom. Maybe this is wisdom. Maybe this is a description of this gal that we have all throughout Proverbs. Look now to Proverbs 3. Proverbs 3, verse 13 through 20. So this is wisdom. I think it's wisdom talking about herself. Are we there? Anybody? 13 through 20.
Happy is the man who finds wisdom, and the man who gains understanding. For her proceeds are better than the profits of silver, and her gain than 5 gold. She is more precious than rubies, and all the things you may desire cannot compare with her. Length of days is in her right hand, in her left hand riches and honor. Her ways are ways of pleasantness, all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who take hold of her, and happy are all who retain her. The Lord by wisdom founded the earth, by understanding he established the heavens. By his knowledge the depths were broken up, and clouds dropped down the dew.
So that is actually a word about wisdom. Who is wisdom in that? By wisdom?
The tree of life is Christ.
The tree of life is Christ, right? Wisdom is being called a tree of life, saying that, by wisdom, things were created. I mean, we're talking about somebody who was there from the very beginning with God. He was there, John 1:1, right? In the beginning was the Word.
And the Word was.
And the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and all that good stuff, right? This is Christ before he became a man, right? With God always there. So we get a little bit of information about wisdom now. Let's go to 8. This is the one I was talking about. Proverbs 8, verses 22 through 31. This is where wisdom is talking about herself. Proverbs 8, verses 22 through 31. Somebody give me that.
The Lord brought me forth as the first of his works before his deeds of old. I was appointed from eternity, from the beginning, before the world began. When there were no oceans, I was given birth, when there were no springs abounding with water. Before the mountains were settled in place, before the hills, I was given birth. Before he made the earth or its fields or any of the dust of the world. I was there when he set the heavens in place, when he marked out the horizon on the face of the deep, when he established the clouds above and fixed securely the fountains of the deep, when he gave the sea its boundary, so the waters would not overstep his command, and when he marked out the foundations of the earth. Then I was the craftsman at his side. I was filled with delight day after day, rejoicing always in his presence.
And so there again, who is this? Who is wisdom? Christ, right? The master workman at God's side, right? How was the world created? Through the Word, right? And who is the Word? Jesus Christ. So we have wisdom now. Wisdom is this amazing Word that was with God from the beginning. And so we kind of look at this woman and we're like, Jesus could do all this stuff. Maybe Jesus is righteous enough to actually accomplish all of this stuff. And so, all right, let's kind of look at that, right? Willing hands to do work. Yeah, right? Coming down to this earth when he didn't have to. This was not something that he chose to humiliate himself, to come down and be born of a woman and things like that. I mean, what kind of dirty work could you ask a God to do? And he was totally willing to do his Father's will all the time, right? Yeah, even in the garden, when he was like, if there's any other way, but I'm going to do it, right? Bringing all of these gifts to his people, like a merchant ship from afar, just collecting everything and giving it to his people. Now, this is a great one, right? Yeah, we can make all kinds of great connections with, Jesus rising while it was still dark to complete what he had come to do. The women go to the tomb while it was still dark, early in the morning, and find that he's gone. He has risen to do some work. What kind of work was he busy with?
Saving us.
Salvation. Yeah. We have, food, getting food for the household. What kind of food does he give his house?
Body and blood.
Talk about physical gifts, his body and blood that he feeds you with, his church, his people. He brings that food to you, right? Considers a field and takes it. We have that parable in Matthew. We won't go to it, but it's about, that guy who finds that treasure. What does he do? He buys the whole field because he knows what's there. And that treasure is you. He buys it so that he can put his work into growing something beautiful. I'm the vine. You're the branches, right? This is all coming from him. Dresses herself with strength and makes her arms strong. It's that fleshly reality that we were talking about. Like, Christ actually came and walked on the earth with real arms and real legs and did this stuff right here in our, well, not here among us, but on this earth for his people. And then we have, she tastes and perceives that her merchandise is profitable, verse 18.
Yeah, which also comes from discernment, and once again.
Yeah. And so tasting and perceiving. Now, this again is, really tied up into that bodily reality of, what's going on. All of our senses, all of his senses were engaged with being on this earth, doing this work of salvation for us. We have more we could talk about the lamp. We won't get into it, but there's a lot there as well. All of a sudden, we're looking through these verses and we're like, oh my gosh, I think he actually did this stuff. I mean, it's not like a woman walking around bringing flax home. It's more like a savior walking around doing amazing work and giving it to his household. And then we get to here, right? Verse 19 and 20. With the hands. So he stretches out his hands to the poor and the needy. So he gets the work done, stretches out the hands for the spindle, everything like that, makes it all happen. And then he stretches out his hands and goes outside and gives it to the poor and needy, those who really need it. And what is he giving? Is he giving just clothes to people?
He's giving himself.
He's giving himself. He's giving himself a life that they could not get on their own. And who are they? Absolutely, they're the poor and needy. And they need this life that he came to give. And so all of a sudden we see this very clear picture of who can actually be this woman. But here's the thing. I don't think we can just say that this woman is Christ and leave it there. Because this actually speaks to you guys. This actually means something to you. So this is not just Christ. Because he did all this, of course. He was the perfect woman, right? Of course. Well, you know what I mean. he was the woman fulfilled, let's put it that way, the Proverbs 31 person. But how does that even mean anything for you? That's great, Christ did it.
So I don't have to.
So I don't have to.
Right.
Because what did he do? He gave this to you. He said, look, I'm going to do this completely perfectly. I'm going to do it more than just clothes and food. I'm actually going to go do everything that you could possibly think of. Make you right with God. Feed you. And then just give you life. And so when we read this, this is actually talking about us. This means that Christ did all these things that we cannot do. But then he gave us this life. He said, guess what? You can feed your family. And you don't have to worry that you're not doing it, completely 100% willingly and happy all the time. Because I died for even that. I'll forgive even that. And then you'll just go and you'll feed your family. And he already did this. You don't have to be Proverbs 31 woman because he was. And then he takes that righteousness and he says, now it's yours. And it's just who you are. And you walk in this world as a righteous woman, no matter what the works of our hands look like, because it's not about the works of our hands. It's about his hands and what they've done. And that's just who you are. So that's where I'm going to leave you. Tears in our eyes, right? We love it. It's so good. You just can't get any better than this. But we will end by praying a petition of the Lord's Prayer, as we love to do. What do we got today, ladies? What do you want to pray? Let's read something from the Catechism. How about...
Lead us not into temptation.
Lead us not into temptation? Would you read that for us?
Sure.
Okay.
What does this mean? God tempts no one. We pray in this petition that God would guard and keep us so that the devil, the world, and our sinful nature may not deceive us or mislead us into false belief, despair, and other great shame and vice. Although we are attacked by these things, we pray that we may finally overcome them and win the victory.
All right.